matter. But we reached out to them here recently and said that, this is the circumstance where we're at, so we want to try to.
They can hear you now.
Garden Park was actually not on the list that the park board narrowed it down to. And the biggest reason being is that the Garden Park is over a program as it is. And our prior master plans have spoken to that issue as well, and just not believing that it needed to continue to add more activities, given how condensed everything is getting up there. When Spawn Ranch visited, I guess they asked after they had seen the other sites that the board picked out. They had asked what were some of the others, and they went around to those and actually thought Garden Park should be added back in for consideration. So they went ahead and did that for the sake of the site analysis. So we had that meeting the other day. It was the first meeting that we recorded. And then as part of the packet for tonight, we sent out the link to that virtual meeting where Spawn Ranch essentially walked through the analysis. The analysis is in this hard copy packet. And ultimately what it ended up, what we ended up with is on page 58. If you pull that up, 30. And it is a matrix with all the different locations and all of the different criteria that Spawn Ranch, and they are looking at potential skate park locations. They compared all of our options based on those criteria and came up with a score. So the question I want to ask is just how many members of the park board had a chance to actually watch that full analysis? 1, 2, 3, 4. How many still need time to look at that? Okay, so certainly before we get too far along with interacting with the public on it, I think it'd be good for everybody to get caught up on what that analysis said. But basically, I think the conclusion that was drawn is he said that pretty much any of these sites is viable, but he suggested the one that he would eliminate was the Dearborn and Frisco option. And he gave a pretty lengthy answer as to why. Now, in his initial analysis, he had scored it a lot lower based on the location actually being under the overpass. Later in the conversation, we said, well, it's a much bigger site than just the area under the overpass. Here's other things that are developing around the area. Would you go back and rescore it based on this information that we shared with you if it wasn't built under that? And a lot of the issue with that site is the complexity of dealing with the Kansas Department of Transportation and getting permissions to build in and around all of those pillars, but also the fact that it's an undeveloped site that is lacking all of the other support structure and amenities that would make it a comfortable park, whether that's bathrooms, visibility is kind of mixed depending on where you're at in that site. Water fountains, drinking, all of those sort of things. It's just missing a lot of the infrastructure that exists in some of the more developed parts. And so for that reason, he ended up scoring it down quite a bit. And actually, during our conversation, he said he would suggest that that get eliminated from consideration. But it doesn't mean that you have to. I just wanted to make that clear. So when you watch the video, you'll actually see him Xing that option out on the screen because he thinks the others are superior for a lot of different reasons. So all of the others score relatively similarly. The top scoring one from his perspective was actually in Shryock Park, and mostly due to the level of amenities that are already available in that location. The pedestrian access, the visibility, restrooms, parking, all of those things that are already in existence. And so any of the options that don't have those amenities, you would typically want to factor those amenities into your cost of construction. And that just means you have less and less money available to actually put it towards a skate park itself. So that was their reasoning. Now we have that reasoning and we need to decide what to do with it. And so pursuant to that scope of services, their responsibility was to do the site analysis and provide us this report. They have now done that. Our responsibility is to, based on this information, select a location that we move forward into deeper design and all of the other elements that are in that scope of services. So I think my biggest question tonight with the park board is related to the public engagement component of the conversation, because everything to this point has been an analysis at this level just to get a consultant on board and going through the various options that we think exist in the community. And we haven't done much or been able to do much on the public engagement side of things. And I think going forward that certainly if we're going to pursue grant opportunities, which is part of our original plan going into this process, the public engagement has to be a pretty big component of the conversation in order for us to satisfy a lot of what the grant reviewers are looking for. And so I think that's one of the questions I want to throw out to the board is, one, what were your observations or thoughts based on what you've heard in the presentation or read in the site analysis? And then two, what ideas or thoughts do you have in terms of the engagement process with the public? How do we translate this into something that the public is involved with in helping us get to that decision and narrowing this down to the one site that we have to work with? So I think that's everything I have to present. So I'll open it up to the board. And first, just take feedback on what your thoughts were on the analysis, or if you think anything was missed, or was there anything surprising about it? Let's start there and then work our way to the public engagement part of it. So, any general thoughts from the board? Any specific thoughts from the board?
Yeah, I don't remember on the design, were they going to have to dig?
That's entirely contingent on what the design actually ends up being. And so when it goes, and we haven't decided any of that. So when he did the site analysis, part of what he looked at in, I believe, the design canvas category, and maybe to a lesser extent the barriers to shovel ready, but I think it's primarily design canvas, is if digging is a component of it, that's something we need to factor in. And so that's actually one of the weaknesses for Shryock Park, where it's scored lower than, say, the Ohio Canyon location was in proximity to the lake. And he said that digging near the lake is going to be a problem because of the high water table, which I think is probably an issue in both of us. But we also talked in that virtual meeting about the issue of shallow rock in a lot of our locations, making it difficult to dig. And so what he said is that's manageable because they can build on top of many locations as well. They can bring in dirt and elevate those locations. So yes, digging was a component of his analysis, but it wasn't specific to any design ideas we have because we have
Yeah, pretty fun. Good elements of parking. I mean, that's always an accessibility issue. Just making sure we have room for that. Have that accessibility. I mean, they got a good analysis from forth to think about on all of those. And, you know, it's kind of quick like.
Okay, if we pull up Google Maps real quick, I want to point a few things out to the board. What I'd like to do for the pedestrian access, because I want everybody to understand in each of these cases, we wanted to try to make the best pitch possible for every location. And so we do have other future projects that are lining up that may have impacted scoring, so I want to share some of that with you. But specifically to kind of what Kip was talking about, one of the big issues that came up with most of our sites, and we know this about our community, is that pedestrian access is not great in a lot of our community. Most of our parks are kind of on islands that are not accessible by sidewalk or trail. Shryock is kind of the one counter to that. Garden to a little bit lesser extent. But it's also not centralized in the community. It puts it towards the north end of town, so it's still pedestrian access is something that plays most of these locations. But I want to tell you kind of how we talk through Dearborn and Frisco, how we talk through Shryock, and what impacted some of that scoring. All right, so this is the Dearborn Frisco side, and again, we talked about both under the overpass and in that ramp around it. So it made significant improvements from a pedestrian access standpoint to this site. And here you can see the sidewalks that are extending all the way on Frisco that actually run all the way up North Ohio. Dearborn, to a lesser extent, has some sidewalks. But that is a big improvement that actually gives that site connected to residential neighborhoods. In addition to this, a new development is we are going to be extending a trail from Walmart to this site, connecting to those sidewalks along the railroad right. We are actually planning on bidding that project here in February for construction to be done in 2021. Once that's actually complete, you will have pedestrian access going all the way into downtown. You'll have pedestrian access cutting across the commercial district down to Walmart, and then connecting all the way over here to these sidewalks that run into the residential neighborhoods. So that sidewalk network actually runs all the way to the north end of town at Belmont and Ohio. So Cody, now can you jump up to Belmont and Ohio intersection leading up to Shryock? So another project, too far. Not too far.
No.
What am I doing? Ignore me. Okay. So another project they're working on that should also be a 2021 project is in and around the Belmont, Ohio intersection. So this is Belmont and Ohio, so go east. Go on to get the school district property right there. There is a sidewalk on school district property on Belmont that just stops kind of in the middle of nowhere. And then once you get to Belmont, there is a small sidewalk that continues north on Ohio Street going towards Shryock Park that stops well short of ever actually reaching. So as part of the North Ohio project that we have designed, We are also incorporating a trail improvement project that will close that gap. It'll have a sidewalk extension that connects down there to the sidewalks on school district property, and those sidewalks actually cut all the way over to Custer, which then comes down to the south end of town. And then it'll also go from the Belmont, Ohio intersection with an 8-foot trail right there where Cody's Mouse is on that west side. It extends all the way north into Shryock Park and connect into that existing network. So once that is done, and the downtown trail is done as well, the one along the railroad right of way, to be able to walk from Walmart up to Shryock Park all the way around the garden on a single continuous sidewalk or trail network. So in either location, the Dearborn or the Shryock options, there is a lot more pedestrian accessibility that is coming this next year that is not necessarily true of those other locations. The pool location, Bill Reed Park, that they just don't have that same connectivity. There's no sidewalks in the surrounding neighborhoods. You would be building a lot of stuff from scratch. In this case, we are closing gaps in an existing network that make these two locations better from a pedestrian access standpoint than the other locations. So that I think those are the only two projects coming up that I think would really impact this scoring, but I think it matters for you all to know that in the decision-making process. All right, so Kip thought the material was good and helped him formulate his thoughts a little bit better. What's some other folks saying about it? Or what questions do you still have? Do you think we need to ask?
I'm going to agree that, you know, the analysis is pretty helpful. And I think that considering the already utilities are that way, the facilities that are already available, especially since they're high schools, that, you know, that kind of really see one in my opinion and where it should be. I mean, that gives you expandability. There's so many different things as far as that, in my opinion. I think that, and I'm going to spend less money. All the support stuff that your body
Right. Well, and then your alternative option is to save on his costs, you could build a skate park with it, support stuff. So either way, then there's a pro and con. There's a pro and con to that case. Any other thoughts? Okay, so let's talk about the public engagement. So big public meetings, and even this one's a little bit bigger than our company with than a lot of people in the same room. But big public meetings are probably, at least in person, are not appropriate at this point in time. So most of our engagement is probably going to be virtual. But I think we still want to try to figure out how to do that in a productive way. But what would be your thoughts, Park Board, on how do we take this analysis and present it? I assume an element would just be making that analysis and that video available to the public. I don't know if you just go straight out there and say, hey, let's start doing direct polling. I don't know if you try to narrow this down from 6 to a different number. I just haven't really thought about what would be appropriate going forward. So that you can see if you have any thoughts on how.
I thought the way we did the splash pad was productive. I mean, if I remember right, we just narrowed it down to a few different designs. Of course, I know we're talking about locations here, but we just narrowed it down to a few different designs and we put that out there for folks to look at, if I remember right.
Well, and the way that one was done was it was basically stated that design has the most votes. So that would be the question you need to pose here is that how you want to treat site selection process and say whichever one the public absolutely good. Or, you see what I'm saying? So that,
Yeah, and that might not be,
well, we gotta think through that a little bit,
Because with the splash park, all the costs were about similar, right? When you put that out for vote. Or opinion.
oh, yeah, the costs were all pretty close on those
Design is pretty much
designs.
similar,
Right. And that's where the public engagement was much deeper. Again, the council, I think, over time has been doing more on the public engagement side. So that was one of our first real experiments into it. We've done a couple of things on other parks before, but nothing to that level. And, you know, I think that one was really interesting where whatever you choose is what we build. But that decision wasn't regarding the location of where it was built. And the biggest reason is the only place we have in town where the actual infrastructure can support it, because we need to get sufficient quantity of water, that was the only place that we could build it. So the public engagement was on the part where you know, none of that other stuff mattered or had that level of consequence to it. And I think the site location choice does have a level of consequence, but I don't think that means that you cut the public advocacy. I also don't think that it means just protect the whatever majority decides because of the other.
the other thing too, I'll throw out is that not being able to do it. Well, there's already good social media stuff that's going. I mean, they've started the Augusta Skate Park Ideas Facebook page. And it's got 275 members. So, you know, I think there's avenues to access folks to get information out there. So if you were to, for example, put the video out, the 20-minute video that they did, you know, I think there's venues that can be done virtually pretty easily. So, and
Another thing, just so folks are aware, is one of Spawn Ranch's deliverables was creating a Facebook group for the skate park conversation, which they did way back then. And so this other one has started kind of on a grassroots basis. And I think certainly from a public engagement process perspective and making sure that we can document the record and have all of that discussion recorded, I think we want to try to get that on all platforms. Somehow translate that where the conversation is going on within that Facebook group and then we can formalize all of that and treat that as a broad public record and make that available for everyone. So that's something I'll probably talk to the organizer of that page and see if there's a way maybe we can translate those things and get it in that form. And it also doesn't have to be an all-in-one shot either. It could be that we start by, here's information, and it just boils down to, let's share this analysis with the public, and then we'll set up something from there to pick up feedback. We can do that. We set the analysis out there. Here is the Facebook page, we want to version of skate park here, we can come on and discuss it and weigh in on this matter. That there could be kind of a phasing element where you use that versus going straight to, okay, help us decide. To figure out is how do we want to run that process.
Facebook page, you want to get more from things like that. You know, to put this information out, maybe, I don't know, once a week, in a new thing, and just a comment section, be the voice of the people that you saw, watched, observed, read, whatever it be, and then as a group, you know, we have that to be able to talk about what's, and then, I guess that would probably be the easiest way to do public comment. It could be, given the stuff.
I agree, and I think there's a lot more interaction that way.
Yeah.
Being able to hear from different members of the community, getting them involved on that so that they can, you know, give their feedback. I think that's why the best way. So let them see first and then come back with what they're interested in and others.
I think we definitely want to run city platform, and we want to be able to control what information goes out. Not what's coming in.
Right, and the other piece of it is if it's a public engagement, you want to be able to document it. open meetings, open records, all that, and that's why I think we want to try to figure out how to shift, at least anything that we do, we need to try to get it on our platform, and because that grassroots has already kind of created the infrastructure and started building up some people, we want to loop them in some way, but we want our conversation to be going on this other platform.
And I think the social media piece, I mean, I think the biggest thing, I think, one of the most successful things that we did, was the Splash Park, and it was the kids involved.
Right.
You know, and then they've been out to the schools, and I'm not saying that we need to go out and present things at the schools, but if you're on social media, if you're on Facebook, you know, I think that you're gonna get a lot more youth kids that will feel comfortable going out there and, you know, communicating that way, and even as opposed to if we have a meeting, getting a 13-year-old kid to speak in public, you know, I'm watching that.
Well, I think you'd be shocked too at the number of people that, I guess I was a bit surprised on the Facebook page, the number of people that are chiming in, that they're not kids.
No,
They're adults that are wanting this as much as the kids, so that, that way you're hitting them too. Hitting everyone.
And so, not that we shouldn't do, just one limiting factor to keep in mind with Facebook is presumably that's actually cutting out a lot of kids because of their age policy. Not that someone under 13 hasn't figured out how to have a Facebook page, but technically that would be precluding a lot of younger voices if that's a goal. So that's one of the reasons that we actually went directly to schools in the splash pad circumstance, which we could still find some way to have that level of interaction. I think it's a great civic exercise for schools too. So we can play around with that idea a little bit. And maybe it's all virtual, but we still have the schools kind of leading the charge with it.
We'll give them seek input for now, and then at some point we decide.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing to keep in mind is all we're talking about at this point is location. So the way this farm ramp is, the way that their scope of services is set up, they have other public engagement activities that are directly invested in the project of designing this skate park. So all of this is trying to get to a location, but they expect to have engagement in what the design and the ultimate layout is. And so that's where I think a lot of the investment in recent scope of services was focused, is getting the community involved and saying, hey, what does this look like? So I think the located issue is where I think in both circumstances, documentation of that process, which is another reason why I wanted on the platform, is going to be critical to getting grants that are out there, because they want to know that the public will engage. And I think the easiest way is for us to completely have it on our platform and just be able to provide them the entire record of it. I think that's kind of what I'm hearing. We do want to go ahead and just treat it, and we will present it. So I'm not going to create anything as put something out there and say, here's the analysis of how we arrived at it. I may even be able to do something like a Facebook Live where I introduce and explain that, and then say, here's the link, go check it out, go watch it, start filling up the discussion board. And then we'll present all that content to our park board and figure out how to move on from there. So that's kind of what I'm hearing. It sounds like that we do want to try to involve the schools in some way. It may not be that direct voting activity, at least at this stage, but maybe have them involved in order to try to get the folks that maybe are a little too young to be on some of those platforms. Any other thoughts? So, as this winds down, I think that the one thing that comes to mind is going forward, then, if we do this exercise with this public engagement, we may have to have a few more park board meetings than normal to actually progress that. Because I think once people start talking about it, if we don't get back together for 3 or 4 months to review that feedback, then I don't think that'll go over as well as if we stay active in that. And then, the other piece of it is we can respond to the questions directly in line in that discussion too. And so I will make sure that when we present it and answer those questions and things, that we're doing it in a way that doesn't try to steer anybody to a particular conclusion. This is just a genuine activity of what do you guys think about the analysis? And then we'll just bring it back accordingly and have that discussion at a park board meeting in the near future. Sound like a general strategy there? Okay, Brian, Cody, anyone else from staff perspective have any other thoughts?
No.
Okay, so what we'll do then is we'll reach out to Spawn Ranch and make sure that we understand how our Facebook page works, and it's called facebook.com/group. So I guess it's set up as a group in Augusta, Kansas State Park. So we'll send out links and figure out how to get people on that, start creating that infrastructure, and then we'll set something up on our other platforms to get the content out there. So you should start seeing it within the next week would be my goal. And then you just got to get people on these platforms once that happens. So please share it, help spread the word on it in any way that you can, and we'll just get as much feedback as possible before our next meeting. Okay. I think I'm done, please.
All right. Very good. All right, since we have a number of folks in the back room, let's go ahead and jump over to Santa Fe Lake and have that conversation with you guys online. We have a business idea for your consideration tonight to go through and adjust fees, which we do on a regular basis out of Santa Fe Lake. But also Rod has a few recommendations for operation changes that he's been bringing to me, that we've been having conversations about. So before anything formal goes to City Council, we'd like to have that conversation with the Park Advisory Board. And engage you guys think. So with that, I'm going to turn this part of the conversation over to Rod Davis, who's our caretaker, to have the conversation.
Okay, so basically Santa Fe Lake for the last 9 years, 8 years, since the filled back up, the lake dried up 2010. Since then, the traffic has been gradually on an uphill climb until we got to 2020, and then the space shuttle took off just because everybody was trying to get outside. But what we've been looking at is between 20 and 30% gains every year until then. Several factors, I think, that are causing that. One is the trends are, they lift it up in nature, people just being more aware of that type of stuff. Two, brought on some new products and facilities that are the outboard rentals, with the light rentals, new programming that has brought more people to the lake. So we're increasing because of that. And when I look back on Google Maps and versus today in our area, when you look, just driving down the road, you don't see so much growth over time. But between 2010 and 2020, counting just rooftops and then calling some apartment complexes, there's over 500 new homes within 5 miles of the lake, new construction homes, and over 200 new apartment units within 5 miles of the lake. And those people are coming. And the last thing I think that has really made a boom for us is social media. 10 years ago, social media was starting, but it wasn't what it is today. Now somebody comes out, they take their selfie, they tag us. Next week, 3 more of their friends are out there. So we have a unique opportunity and unique challenges with the lake. The challenges are because we're under the general fund, our budget is set, and we have very little room that we can go up every year on that, even if we bring in more revenue. We can't legally go over that. These guys can explain that more than me. Staffing wise, being able to run the park, we are limited with that many people coming in and that many people wear and tear on the park. So the unique challenge or the uniqueness is good is that we can pick and choose a little more about what we want to do and the clientele that we bring in. And where we put our resources, what programming we want to emphasize, like the trails, is great, beaches, like this many weekends and not hit 3 weekends. Throttling back the lake in order to try and keep people social distance. At the beginning, we didn't know, even nobody knew what was going on. You know, adjust every week to see what we need to do. It's gotten so busy that we can't fit all the people that are coming, and we can't even staff to manage the number of people that are coming. Some things that we are doing, we've expanded our beaches about 60%. That's in process actually right now. That's great entertainment. One of the number one things, the trails, one of the number one things that is happening. You know, it used to be camping and boating was our number one assets. The number one thing people were coming for. It's not anymore. It's trails and beaches and just being out in nature. Those are, you know, the camping's still significant. Great thing that we offer. So basically what we're forced with is making our rates so that we can manage the crowd. So basically you raise your rates, bring the numbers down. It's just supply and demand. I think we all have a list of what rate changes are in there. We did do some necessary changes last year. We switched to, if you wanted to camp, you had to have a season pass. And the park was busy with campers every single weekend. A couple of reasons we did that. One, keep the numbers down. Two, because all of our people who have been season pass members for years, and I see some of them in the back, they were showing up and the place was packed out full, nowhere for them to camp because it's full of people who've never been there. And it's really not fair to those folks. So that was one of the adjustments we made. And it worked out extremely well. Now the downside of it is there's a lot of transient traffic that comes through during the week. And they're coming across country, traveling. They would stop, and it wasn't feasible for them to buy a season pass to have to camp. So we missed a lot of that business. Also, maybe one of our season pass members has family that's in town for a weekend that wants to camp. It wasn't feasible for them to buy a season pass to camp online. So what we're looking at doing is leaving rates the same for our season pass holders for campers. And if it's a non-season pass holder, then the rate is here. You get one rate for the season pass holders, one rate for non-season pass holders. Makes it still affordable for the person that's camping one time, but it makes it where the park isn't super impacting or regulars come out to camp for it completely full. Basically what we're looking at doing is doubling all of our camping fees for non-season pass holders and increasing the day rate $2. Revenue wise, I can't tell you exactly what that's going to do, probably close to $40,000 in revenue. Hopefully down the road will help us with some additional staffing. To give you an idea, there's 2 months this summer where we average the transaction every 2.5 minutes a lot of the my wife will probably
voting, home time, exploited, especially in the cattle craft. We actually, the last couple of years, raising rate, and, 50 years. It's getting very shallow. Back to 2000, the last real scientific study that we did, the bathymetric study of the lake, roughly 60 acres of the lake is deeper than 6 feet. And the rest of the 230 acres is flat with an average of the whole lake being 4.7 feet at that time. And from the estimate that they had at that time, it's probably about a foot shallow now. Power boats are, we're up to about safety concerns, I know. It's a storm, and they run off the logs auto park and kayak probably nearly 6,000 launches last year. That water still 3,000. So we're traveling on the water, that's one of the reasons to go into the middle. The other reason was, still red wall, the water is not there, really cool. Really dilapidated condition. We've been, two things in the 2020, 26, our progress down on that, the speedboats are going by, more and more way back. Those are the reasons why we want to Those are the reasons that we have not been, only other increase that we're looking on is normal permit for non-residents going from 50 to 55, and the $5 bump on the second season pass. We're just one half of it, from 15 to $20. Even Augusta residents, loan, as far as I recall, it's $21 for the year, not limiting any horsepower, so to not 200 horsepower, like the city, it's still 5 miles an hour. Basically, just like the city, You know, that's the last year, I think we said many season passes, always follow season passes. Not a significant number. But when most of what we sold was, under 10 horsepower anyway, the largest number of the retail community as well. Not, near the numbers. Any questions? Did I miss anything?
I just say for the sake of clarity, two operational changes for staff looking at the staff talking tonight about. Number one, designating the entire lake as no rate. That does not impact the horsepower. We're not proposing a horsepower limitation. It is simply designating the entire lake as no rate, and that is because, as Rod mentioned, the depth and the concern with that. Number two is completely eliminating the personal watercraft jet skis. Right now, we allow 4 strokes. A couple of years ago, and some of you were on the park advice board this time, recall in the conference room, we had a park advice board meeting where the park advisory board did make recommendations to the council to eliminate 2-stroke jet skis. Actually, at that time, if I recall, the park advisory board was in favor of eliminating 4-stroke as well, but we did not go down that path. But with the proposal that we're making tonight, which we're finally eliminating 4-stroke powered personal watercraft jet skis from San Carlos as well. And so I want the park advisory board to be aware of what those operations changes will be. Questions, thoughts, comments?
Yes, sir. You're right. Well, another 10 years, we have to put it out in. To continue to take it in.
So it's going to be real interesting if you take a look at the screen. This is information the city engineer put together in 2018 when they did the dam inspection. Because of the classification of the dam, we have to have our dam inspected out for every 3 years. You can see in 2018, max depth was estimated at 11 feet. Average depth throughout the entire lake was 4.7 feet. So it is not a deep lake. If you've got 260 acres and your average depth is 4.7, you've got a lot of lake that's less than 4.7. The city council meeting, 2 weeks ago, I guess it was Monday. 2 weeks ago Monday, the city council did vote in favor of retaining Schwab to do another dam inspection for us for Santa Fe Lake that has to be submitted to the Kings Public Agriculture, the Water Resources, before the end of April. It's going to be really interesting to see how much deviation there are from those numbers right there in a 3-year period. And from that, Jeremy, we'll be able to really see at what rate are conditions changing out of Santa Fe Lake.
Oh, yeah, we know. Yeah. Right, we know that. I mean, you weren't in the shallows. If you got shallows, then you would have been basement.
Pardon me?
We really don't. It was recommended years ago. And like I said, 2 years ago, the park and advisory board at that time wanted to go for set up some watercraft. My voice concerned to not do that because of the long-term investments that we have. You know what? It's not good for us to do this to be. We have got 50 years on. Everybody for the last couple of years has got to know this road is coming, so that it isn't a complete stop.
I think one thing to take into consideration is we certainly wouldn't be making the recommendation if we didn't feel it was worthwhile. We want folks to have fun out of Sanitary Lake. We want folks to be as safe as they can out of Sanitary Lake. Our infrastructure's got some challenges that we're currently working through with the state, trying to get that taken care of. Our next dam inspection will give us a better idea of where we stand in that. I also think that there's lakes in the region that are better suited for the fast boats. They're better suited for the suiters and the jet skis. I don't feel like Sanitary Lake is that lake, which is prompting this conversation.
Just to let you know that when it was new, there was 34 feet. The deepest spot today, right now, because it was just after the rain, probably 8.5 feet. Other graphic. This is from 2010. And we know that based on our sedimentation rate of 3 centimeters a year, it's basically every time you look at, then those numbers here. That study was done by Kansas Geological Survey, Biological Survey in 2003. If you really want to read a whole bunch, I have 48 pages to
But
Okay, you guys drain that water into some place, right? Sell it?
we can get backup water resource. It's not something that's done on a regular basis. I don't know when the last time.
it's actually a tertiary water supply. So our primary water supply is El Dorado Lake. Our secondary is Augusta City Lake. Santa Fe Lake is a tertiary, so it's basically a third tier water supply for us. No, not necessarily.
I don't think you pulled from this past week.
Yeah, we haven't.
If we get it's not.
Well, we were told about this meeting today. Somebody said that for something, so I don't think the public knows a lot about this. Public come in, talk about this. But I think those should be allowed on.
We're not eliminating those. By any
No,
means.
I mean, horsepower.
But not regulating horsepower. Jet skis are the only thing that we're not doing, that voting to fix that. Only on, day passes, and we only did so many season passes. Once we sold our limit of season passes, we stopped that. And that was due to a couple of factors. Mostly COVID, when everybody was going to the lake, there wasn't a boat to be bought anywhere. We didn't have resources. There's a whole lot more in play in 2020. We didn't have the resources to manage that many boats on the water by any means, especially at sea. I don't think there were very many at all people that wanted to buy season passes that wanted to. Less than a half. Now, if they wanted a daily pass, daily passes, we can get it.
We heard about them doing no wig. That's why they couldn't pay. They didn't want to keep the pass, but they were not guaranteed to vote out. I was told that by the trying to get all the way. That's for no wig. No wig, none.
5 mile an hour. 5 mile an hour.
Yeah, we can't water ski. That's what we want to do.
And for your safety and for the health of the lake, that is why we're doing that. If we got to
move the wagon wheel from here off the Santa Fe Lake.
I don't know how long you've been there, but
we've been there for 20 square feet.
Okay, so we'll wait till 2.5 feet, solid. There you go.
Lots from the advisory board. So what staff is looking for, if you are comfortable with it, we're looking for a recommendation to make that approval to the city council for the operation changes and also the changes to fee structure, which will be presented to the city council at an upcoming meeting, if the advisory board is comfortable with it. Okay, so we've already got a ban on the two-stroke. Right, so. Right.
Now, where are we moving what? Yeah, we need to have these days. Basically,
And your motion include, we have a motion on the floor to eliminate both the watercraft, and to designate the designated rate as well as. We have a motion and a second. Do we have any further discussion? Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right, I will take that recommendation. I can take down here. Yeah. Are you on, Rob, want to do it? Not me, or you want to wait?
yeah, the sooner the better, that way, some people that we want to buy food and taxes. Can do that. You know,
All right, let's move over to the last item that we've got for you tonight. This is the park system master plan. This was a project that was not mixed in, it was a part of the plan that staff had been working on for a couple of years. Fortunately, that was approved by the city council. Last year. Subdivision regulations. That portion of the Broadway master planning project is completed. So the only portion of the project that we have to finish at this point is the park system master plan. City planner Anita Riley's been working diligently to bring some finality to that. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Anita to present park system master plan. I presented an iteration of the park system master plan to the park advisory board albeit a couple of years ago. So a few things have changed since then with the creation of the plan. So either you want to take this, use my computer or
Make sure everybody talk plenty loudly. Make sure you use the mic.
Thanks for your patience. Okay, so Jim mentioned that this presentation is for the purpose of applying for the adoption of Park System Master Plan. So this presentation, well, it's not going to be an overview, and it's not going to be a deep dive. It's going to be more of a medium review of the draft document, and it's been in the works since 2017. We'll talk a little bit about some background here, and that background is going to speak to how this master plan and the comprehensive plan are related. And we'll see that very quickly. Because, anyone who knows me knows that I'm pretty much obsessed with the comprehensive plan. The reason is that the comprehensive plan is the backbone of the community's planning efforts. And it provides guidance on planning related decisions, and it serves as a basis for any number of planning documents, including this Park System Master Plan, as well as all other planning documents that support the implementation of the comprehensive plan. What is the purpose of our Park System Master Plan? And, I'd like to say first, it ensures that the resources of the city's parks are being used effectively, whether that is financial, whether that is staff resources or environmental resources. Second, it helps establish priorities for projects so that those the greatest community benefits are prioritized. And as a side benefit, having a master plan increases the number of grant opportunities that the city can apply for. That tends to be So, how was the plan developed? The Park System Master Plan was originally developed in 2006. Vision Augusta supplemented the plan in 2008, and the plan itself was updated in 2014. The Pride and Progress Plan was identified, also identified a number of parks projects, and many of those projects have been completed. And in 2017, PEC was contracted to develop the 4 planning documents for the city of Augusta, including the Park System Master Plan. PEC worked with the city to gather information related to the city parks and recreation facilities, and offered suggestions for improvements. The process included site visits to assess the condition of the parks and interviews with city staff to address goals and concerns, and public input sessions were provided and provided information on the needs on the community, engaged the residents' needs for the park system, and their interest in contributing to the funding of park improvements and expansion. So this information was then processed to create the recommendations of this plan. The draft plan was completed in late 2020, and we are reviewing the document today to make a recommendation to the planning commission and preparation for adoption by the city council. So if we take a look at the plan itself, we see that the master plan begins by laying out its goals in the introduction. These goals are directly reflective of the goals in the comprehensive plan, and they are, as noted, to create a well-connected and easily accessible park system, to develop and maintain a wide variety of amenities and facilities, and to provide diverse recreational programs. These were all laid out in the first two chapters of the plan. So the next chapter describes the benefits that products bring to the community, and they begin with the economic benefits. We know that parks have been shown to increase property values of nearby homes. This benefits both the residents and the city. Studies have direct correlation between nearby parks and home prices. And there are instances where the increase in property tax actually exceeds the cost of maintaining the parks. In terms of economic benefits, it should also be noted that parks and recreational programming bring outside visitors to the community, which offer additional economic benefits related to tourism. For social benefits, parks provide opportunities for public gathering and social interaction, and venues for community events. The health benefits of parks are widely documented. Studies done in the American Journal of Public Health concluded that public parks are critical resources for encouraging physical activity. They found, among other things, that people who work within a half mile of a park routinely exercise 4 or more times a week more often than those living further away. People who live within 1 mile of the park are 4 times as likely to visit the park once a week again, and have an average of 38% more exercise sessions per week than those who live further away. Parks also provide a vegetative area that provides that's used as habitat for wildlife, and they provide opportunity to improve air quality, the ability to manage stormwater runoff, and groundwater discharge or recharge. I believe it's the fourth or fifth chapter of the document provides park classifications. And we'll run through those very quickly, beginning with the mini park. The mini park is known as a pocket park. Docking Park is an example of such. It's usually an acre or less, and they're only tucked into existing urban areas. We have neighborhood parks, and those are generally 3 to 10 acres in size, and they serve a specific neighborhood. Community parks are generally 25 acres or more in size, and they serve multiple neighborhoods or an entire city, such as Eden Park. And then we have regional parks, which are generally 50 acres in size or greater, and they serve multiple communities with their open space, and they have an area-wide impact by bringing travelers into the area and supporting local businesses as Sanford does. Then we have special use parks, and there are really no formal guidelines for such parks. They're customized to the use of the community, and use for community are an example of that. And then finally, we have linear parks in the categories. We actually do not have any linear parks in the city at this time. Moving into the next section, we have the park system inventory. The inventory identifies 14 parks that exist or plan. large regional parks to the small pocket parks that we have discussed. Our parks cover over 303 acres of land, and that doesn't include the 431 acres of water included within this plan. And all of those are within the Augustus city limits. The remainder of the chapter for parks system inventory contains the amenities and opportunities for each park in order to further meet the needs of the Augusta residents. But we're going to go ahead and just focus on one park to give you an idea of what the inventory entails. So we are looking at Santa Fe Lake, and we're beginning with the amenities. This plan identifies the swimming beach, the dog beach and boat ramp, the camping and picnicking facilities, as well as parking and playground. And finally, the hiking and biking trails and the restroom facilities. Then we're looking at opportunities. The plan recommends providing facilities and amenities that are similar to parks in the region, and we're also it recommends increasing the diversity of facilities, amenities, and services in the area. This would be critical for the long-term self-sufficiency of the park. An example of this might be April Gardens, situated by the lake, as I understand this is an area of interest. The plan also recommends expanding the trail network, perhaps by considering trails specifically designed for mountain biking and trail running. And I believe we have a little video here that shows a mountain bike course or skills course, and hopefully that we have good enough overview. Okay. And that would be an example of a mountain bike course that might be considered for further when we're looking at programming. Another opportunity is increasing the camping opportunities and providing more diversity in the camping offerings. Next, there are opportunities to increase the programming of the park, and the city may consider such things as educational opportunities, such as natural preservation and water resource management, as well as summer camps that would engage adolescents in the area. There's a recommendation that a Friends Up group be organized to actively improve the park amenities and programs. This is a recommendation that is already being informally implemented. And formalizing the effort to offer additional structure to the volunteers. It might allow collaboration of efforts to develop projects and programs, and identify and act as a mechanism for raising funds for the park. Then finally, the recommendation there's a recommendation identifying the provision of more visible entry signage at Santa Fe Lake Road and providing directional signage from US 54. So these are all pretty high-level recommendations that are being made for the lake. The rest of the document consists of an analysis of the system and recommendations that apply across the entire system. The plan evaluated the service levels for the system, and service levels is basically a way of speaking of metrics for how much parkland is available or the population. The service levels are applied across the different park types mentioned earlier, and that would be the mini parks, neighborhood parks, community parks, and the regional parks. The analysis found that there are current deficits in the amount of land available for community parks and mini parks. And also forecasts a larger deficit for community parks in the amount of just over 25 acres, and for mini parks in the amount of almost 6 acres. And that would be by 2040. A minor deficit was identified of just over 1 acre for land for mini parks by 2040. So with that said, the plan also indicates that there's pretty good distribution of parks throughout the community, and noted that most of Augusta is within a mile of the park. And so this information serves to as a good jumping off point for discussions regarding future parks planning. And finally, it all leads to recommendations that were made at the end of the document. And these recommendations apply across all of the city's parks and fall into the following categories. ADA compliance, and there was a recommendation that the city commission a comprehensive community-wide analysis to determine ADA access and identifying needed improvements regarding ADA compliance. For maintenance, it was identified that unsafe playgrounds are an issue nationwide, and so there are recommendations made to prevent degradation of equipment, so that it doesn't become an issue. There's a recommendation to establish a life cycle maintenance program to replace old and outdated equipment, and also to establish an annual maintenance plan. There is a further recommendation that individual master plans be developed for various parks throughout the community, and this will help develop a clear understanding of the future of each park, what the park will look like, and what improvements will be made. We have personal safety as another recommendation. And those personal safety recommendations were made to help users feel safer within each park. Recommendations included ensuring that there was adequate lighting, that there are clear sight lines, and that visibility is provided in all of the community parks and trails. There was a recommendation for a new sports contract. This was an issue that came up several times during discussion with different community members and groups, and the commissioning a study to evaluate the feasibility of such a contract. And then finally, there was a recommendation for new parks and amenities. And I guess it has a lot of program for a city of its size. There are some underserved areas, and so the consultant provided some guidance around what kind of facilities the city might want to consider. And I think that it's worth noting that the Rails to Trails corridor and the future downtown park and Veterans Memorial serves as an example of this type of recommendation. And that would conclude this presentation.
A lot of information. A lot of information to go over. One of the things I want to remind or let the Park Advisory Board know is the park system master plan is just that. It is a master plan for the entire park system. So if you look at the hierarchy of planning within the city, the ultimate vision of the city is okay, and that's generally California plan, and that's the plan that the city council approved. So feeding into the comprehensive plan, you have development goals. Okay, so we have our zoning regulations and our subdivision regulations. Those are essentially the vehicles to help make the comprehensive plan occur. Something else feeding into the comprehensive plan from a green space perspective is the park system master plan. And so that is going to be the high level document that takes a very broad look at the entire park system. So one of the suggestions one of the suggestions made by the park system master plan is to create individual park master plans. And so when you see those individual park master plans, that's where you really start diving into the details for how each park is going to develop and how each park is going to look because of its development at the time that the plan is implemented. What we do not want to have happen is we do not want to have a park system master plan that in 20 years is still effective. It's still, it's still valid. We want to use this as a tool during the budgeting process, during operations, to make sure that what we're doing in the park system meets the intent of what it is that is contained within our park system master plan, also with the individual park plan. So take, for instance, our strategic plan for the city right now. Strategic plan is something that we've looked at and said, okay, over the next 3 years, this is what we want to work on. This is what we need to work on to help move our community forward. Contained within the strategic plan are very pointed initiatives. Create a master plan for Santa Fe Lake. Create a master plan for Elmwood Cemetery. Create a master plan for Tryout Park, and create a master plan for Garden Park, right? The major areas within our community. I would go so far as to say we could look at another master plan, and that would be a master plan for the municipal swimming pool. We know it's about 21 years since it's been updated. So at some point, we're gonna need to really hone in and start making some improvements there. There's always the possibility where we could do a master plan specifically for the municipal swimming pool and know exactly what it is that we're trying to achieve through the improvement process. Another master plan that we are looking at that's not necessarily driven towards parks, but is still very much very important for the development of our community is stormwater master planning. We know that inundation stormwater has severe consequences. And so from a staff perspective, that is something that we're working on as well. Not necessarily geared towards the parks, but stormwater affects everything, whether it's personal development, whether it's our park system, public property, personal property, whatever the case may be.
Because Anita made that point a little bit earlier, that on the stormwater component, the parks, because of the green space, can play a role, could be part of it.
They absolutely do, but you typically, where I was going, you typically don't have stormwater master plan as a component of the park system master plan. But it impacts everything that we do here in town. Thoughts? You've seen a lot of information. Do you have any thoughts, questions about the process? So, because the first one is which I'm trying to understand. We'll take this as a criticism. So we just now recommended raising the rates out there to lower the number of people that come out here. Go out there. So I'm a little confused about let's add more communities that new people would want to use and use it for things that we don't. Right now, we're trying to tell people don't come out.
In the master plan, we have another 80 acres of unused parkland where we have actually 120 acres of unused parkland. That we can develop into. Part of that, we have some challenges getting to 40 acres of it. There's no challenge getting to it if we're going 40 acres here. The other 80 acres of community. that would fall into within the master plan. What the measures that we're taking today are to manage what we have today. The measures we're taking for this master plan is for the next 20 years. Yeah, we got a plan for today. We got to work for today, but we got a plan for tomorrow.
Yeah, so if I think you know this from like the discussions of council, there's been a lot of comments maybe about what is the future, what do we do with this facility? And it's largely because we don't necessarily have a guiding principle, a guiding vision. And, we built it up a certain way that made it to this level of success and generated this traffic and everything like that. But we don't necessarily have the infrastructure to deal with the traffic that we experience. So the question, the challenge, and the issue with the master plan is what level of traffic are we going to design it to? And what is going to use to support it? Because as that grows, staffing, everything grows to try to keep up with it. And the level of which we decide we want to go that way is not actually been decided by any kind of governing body, by the daughter. That's what master plan will help us answer. So I think the way that you can point out sounds accurate, because we have a challenge with it right now and trying to keep up with how things fight so precipitously as a result of the pandemic, and we are not set up to keep up with it, so we need to manage it at this moment. That may be a different thing from what the vision is, but we haven't necessarily had that conversation with the governing body and the entities to say, look, that's what it is. So that's why we get that apparent. It may not be that case because you're dealing with that one issue versus the other. I don't know if I explained that maybe better than in 6 words.
So it should also be noted that for each part, they identify opportunities. Those opportunities could be elements to improve the park, physically or environmentally, but it also includes a number of a wish list of sorts for parks and you see some of that in front of there to be considered, and that would be considered in the master planning process for example.
But another example, the sedimentation discussion itself and the challenges of the lake. So we recognize we have a shallow problem that creates safety issues for us to deal with. Therefore, here's the program that we need to deal with. Now, if we decide that our vision is that that program is existing, that you allow it to, well, then our planning may be very different. Instead of just taking the program, we've got to start talking infrastructure projects to the lake. So that's how the things play out. It's the program and being responsive to service versus what are we actually trying to achieve. And I don't think we've settled what we're trying to achieve.
Okay.
Any other thoughts, questions, comments? Mike, did that answer your question? Okay.
And just like I was going to say, I think it's related to that depth issue. I assume, not guaranteeing this, but I assume that for any reason whatsoever that lake ever was doing, and that the depth of that actually point of what we do, that conversation whether there should be, and we come up again. So that's the issue of the circumstances and the program. We're not going to for that purpose, but more than establish that the vision.
So for all the parks, there's going to be goals. There's going to be more higher level policy considerations. We'll dive into the details in the individual park master plan to help us identify what does this look like over the next 20 years, right? What kind of programming do we want? Do we want to envision, or do we want to see happen over the next 20 years? As we mentioned earlier, we've got to kind of work with the lake. A lot of that involves a dam. A lot of that involves a spillway. Certainly, dredging the lake is yet a totally another issue. But through the master planning process, through the individual master planning process, there'll be community engagement, there'll be park advisory board engagement, there'll be city council engagement. So stakeholder engagement at various levels to get, hopefully as much input as we really can to produce a well-rounded master plan for these park systems. So what I'm looking for, what staff is looking for, is if you're happy with what you see, Anita, correct me if I'm wrong, but you're looking for a recommendation to recommend approval to the planning commission, because at that point, Anita's going to take this to the planning commission to have them weigh in, and then the order. What's staff looking for is a recommendation for the recommendation for the planning commission. That's correct. That is correct. And basically what we're doing tonight is we're elevating to the next level. The planning commission is going to take a look at it. And then past that, we'll go to the city council for final with the individual master plan. Yes. And so 2021, what we're working on is Santa Fe Lake and Elmwood Cemetery. What a master plan looks like for Elmwood Cemetery, I don't know yet. That's something that we're talking about internally. Nita and I have conversations. Brian and I have had conversations. Maybe for the cemetery, we're looking at aesthetics. We're looking at specific features in the cemetery. Do we want the gazebo? Do we want the waterfall? Do we want scattering gardens? What do we want it to look like? So we're not approving any of that tonight. What we're looking for is approval for the overarching park system master plan that we can then elevate to the next level of review. So ultimately go to the city council for final approval. So that is something that we looked at from a executive team level when we were working on the strategic plan. And so I looked at it from the perspective of what are 4 areas that we really need to get out? What are 4 areas where we really need to put some planning together to help dictate what that future looks like? Inside the city, the 2 busiest parks are definitely Garden Park and Park. There's been a lot of development in both of those parks. A lot of development in Garden Park. There's been the new restroom facilities and concession facilities over in Garden Park. But we also know that throughout much of the summer, that's a very, very popular place, not only for folks that want to get out and just golf, but for folks who want to go out to the baseball game. So we thought that those are 2 areas that are important for the program, also planning. Looking at Santa Fe Lake, Rod's got a ton of ideas that he's always thinking of to enhance the environment. Is that Rod's vision? Is that park advisory vision? Is that the city council vision? Is that the customer's vision, right? So rather than taking money out of the operating budget to create these, to bring these ideas to life, we need to plan. We need to make sure that what we are truly putting money towards out there is a collective vision that has been agreed upon, that has gone through the democratic process, and that the decision makers, the city council, the park advisory board, and the patrons of Santa Fe Lake, along with Rod, want to see it happen out there. And so that was that's where we started with those conversations. And that's how we identified, from our strategic plan, what are we going to focus on in the near term? The near term, we're looking at Santa Fe Lake, Elmwood Cemetery. Next year, we're looking at Garden Park and Trial. And we may have to be a little bit flexible for concrete. There's a lot that goes into planning. There's stakeholder engagement with illustrations and bringing pictures to life and being able to see what does this development look like. There's a lot that goes into it. 2 plans a year is pretty darn aggressive. 4 plans in 2 years is extremely aggressive and doesn't provide for much time for anything else. But it's also something that we want to keep on the front burner so we can get it done sooner rather than
I just sent you an email with the downtown park master plan is completed, the space people, we can consider all the detail and an example of an individual else. So this will mainly be, I think, for the new members will work hard at crafting that process, and that was a lot more detailed conversation of what are the types of look like versus what is it capable of doing, what are ideas for what we do. So when you boil down to an individual plan, you want to start answering those types of what are those types of questions, and that's not necessarily being done at this high level of the master plan, other than coming up with the concept. So you can zoom in and we'll see it's level of detail all the way to what type of improvement, what types of density, landscaping those that will cost estimates associated with it. And that's what the plans really will get to. And as I, the planning review is to make sure that the recommendations and areas part of the master plan are going to be open. With the good comprehensive plan with the city, we don't want to become, it's going to be on. The park plan says we like that park master plan, we like the clear opposite direction as part of the review and make sure that these things are consistent.
That's correct.
So, and Robert's bill and after the 30, that order was in the strategic plan that comes to approve, and that's why we follow. So if there's a different priority, I think change that, then yes, you can certainly with that sequence and it was in the strategic plan document, that's what I laid out, and that's why we're going to follow. So you asked about the order and how they need to make it into the conversation division. That's kind of what I'm explaining where that came from. That also came from council and we had in the past. What are we doing with that? What are we doing with this? So that's how they made it in the initially. That's the sequence of how it goes now. That's the order that they were shown in our strategic. So you have the ability to change them. Also, if you make it a different order, you follow because that's what's in the document goes into. So it was put together, so we had staff input and feedback early on with the employees, and then we worked on the executive team, well, the executive team being all the department heads of the city. And so the park stuff is in there, but it's actually a component of like 4 or 5 that are out. So it's just one of the great maybe involvement section. And then we presented those general recommendations, the kind of the consulting on the different players. So here's here's the areas, and then we try to work on individual strategies within these plans. And then that was presented to council, and council had the option to approve that, or approve us to do or not. And so that was adopted. But it's just a plan. And the great thing about plans is that you can change them. But if you're asking how staff is once we have plans to go, if we try to follow that sequence of the best we can is certain. That doesn't mean we don't have freedom to change. That is the beauty of it.
Selfishly, you get to look at I would curious, the sports complex in interest. I would like to know where that is covered. Because sports complex, sport commission, we have talked about this stuff for years. And so I am concerned that if something else that's come up with a recommendation, and I know that a lot of people talk about this. I mean, that's coming in here. Him and I are talking about this. Where is that on the priority list? Because we just keep, sliding down. I don't know if it ever gets to the
And I think that this board has a lot of role in helping determine what priority would be. So historically, the sports complex, I think, is primarily focused on baseball, and that was in the 2006. And it may have been sports complex, so I thought it was primarily represented in baseball. And so that came to council in a variety of different ways. Ultimately, we tried to put together a record. We had that vote was really successful. And that was largely a grassroots level. The city getting a ton of involvement with that, and I think that was my design. And I think that some of the discussion, there's a week that if the city wasn't involved with it, maybe it doesn't get any traction. Maybe there's more opposition because of the city. So that was largely put together and running more after grassroots level. The city, part of the resources behind it, even though we would support. And so that vote is before the right recognition. And if anyone recalls from that, the recognition and the vote on creating that commission was actually turned it into a taxing entity. Taxing entity was going to give you resources to build something of that scale. And so the question is now, why is it not a priority list? I guess because we shot. It doesn't mean it's the only thing. Because I do feel so there's still interest in having and potentially looking. But it's not that we do nothing. We shot in the office. And now we need to, I do think that's what we're discussing is, well, how do you proceed? Do you just accept it? Also, do you do that? I think that's kind of what it seems. Can't even remember what really quick one, but it was 18, 17, 17.
Josh, I don't know. I think that it's worth another go at it, find out where it's good and why we feel and how it's good. I honestly believe city council staying out of it was not a good thing. I mean, I honestly believe that it needed that. More visual piece of it, that would have been a better, more planning. That's what I'm talking about. I guess if we're pulling it back to kind of the priority thing, I would be in favor of us as a board being able to look at that and say, what is our thought about what the priorities should be? And see if there's enough stuff that's where we're at.
The impact of course, the building, you know, we have plans like $7, maybe, you know, we're in the middle of it. But the amount of traffic that got, and that first camp, the one of it right there, it's floating. So, besides being exposed and capacity, there's huge support of that. As a downtown representative, the amount of things that could bring to the table tomorrow. So I have to agree, I'm really for my business. You know, it's benefit.
The cool thing about people want to think of it. People want to think about it. 39, we really love them to go, but we're very much like you. Previously, you know, if you think about early down 2019, I feel every ball. So, you know, you talk about $1 million facilities that they're doing, building gardens. The garden, I think they're good, the number of people you can get. There is a little bit of increase, but they have to be. But the people kind of play baseball is best because they like it. It's amazing when you hear people say in the town, that every play. There's a lot of improvements you can do with that. But I think it's a good commitment designed to do that. You know, so this is really good and really bad. People like to do it and adjust it because of their ballpark. You would lose that if you don't, you would lose some if you build a big city. You'll lose the trees, you'll lose the green space, you'll lose the trees that have water in it. That's some of the things that if you look at that in the master plan going forward, is that you still have to bring that piece of the play. But on the other hand, things that will bring in big money. We want to see the process. We got to see some China. We call a lot of teams, Mike and I talked about this, we call a lot of teams that stuff in these teams. Like some of the rest of the page that that's really.
You just got that in.
I'm not
But, at the point, you know, Volvo, okay, you know, but you go to Ford, there are a billion symbols. One time we had but just those things that can make those types of things happen. We have a great software complex. There's a lot of things that we're lacking. We're lacking organization. We're lacking the people of all ages. Absolutely. You know, we used to have my mom ran the softball league. Women, they had a women's softball league. That's not even an option. You know, but those things are on the wayside. When I was at a high school, we had one of the critical volleyball. There was a lot of things that we tried to make happen, and now we're nothing. But it's simply softball.
We also have not just one day for work on looking at the structure board to maintain the credibility when they think it's going to be. We use that almost like the recreation division to use it, but they're all in it. city already, almost good, you know, a couple of years ago, they did all of April, stuff to figure it out. But, there's always a part.
Well, and that's one thing that North Indian that's primarily this facility based. And as Andy was talking about, we're not a community who's really actively involved in programs. And that's generally what that commission will do for you, when some other cities, they have the recreation departments that are actually the program use of facilities. We do very well. And so that would be part of that vision. Is that what you expect? And there's no, there would be something very different. This is primarily, here are our facilities. I don't want to say largely passive, but there's much more in the passive plan that just says we provide a facility, go forth and play every year. Is that what you want? These are very legitimate conversations for the parking and figure out what your thoughts are.
I think another way to look at it is the park system master plan is a vehicle for the park advisory board to be more effective at park planning and determining what our park system should look like. So this outlines a plan. This is a vehicle, this is a tool for you guys to use. To Josh's point, if we need to reprioritize anything, that can be done. That's not a problem. But what this does is this gives you, this is a vehicle, this is a tool for you guys to use to be intentional in your work to make our park system better and more functional. So with that, if there's interest, we'll entertain a motion to move this park system master plan up to the planning commission for the next level of review. And if that's interested, all right, we have a motion on the table to move the park system master plan to the planning commission. Is there a second? We have a motion and a second on the floor. Do we have any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right. Well, that concludes our business items. We have a motion to adjourn. Do we have a second? We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you. I appreciate your time.